Welcome back to Quick Take Charge. I'm Tim Stennebeck in New York. GameStop's wild ride just continues. Some analysts are even warning that we're at the heart of a second speculative bubble. Here with the latest is Bloomberg Markets reporter Katie Greifeld. Hey, Katie, thanks so much for joining us on this. Hey, it does seem like deja vu. It seems like all of this is happening again with GameStop. What is going on with the company?
It does feel like deja vu, especially because it seems like there's another showdown going on. This time it's between your day trader, your Reddit crowd, and the Wall Street analyst, because at the start of this week, we did have some fundamental news and that Ryan Cohen was tapped to lead the company's e-commerce revival. And remember, Ryan Cohen is the activist investor that joined the board in January and just kickstarted this entire mania. So that happened at the beginning of the week. That set off this initial resurgence that we saw. But Wall Street analysts have come out and said this was expected. This was part of the reason why he joined the board in the first place. It doesn't justify the type of move we've seen. But if you look at Twitter, if you look at Reddit, it's all about GameStop still. So you're seeing this tug of war kind of really play out in the stock. I mean, yesterday was the perfect example. GameStop dropped over 50% at one point. It was actually halted because it was so volatile. And still, it's up over 90% for the week. So you're just seeing this really just play out in the stock market. Katie,
you cover this stuff so closely. Can you just put into context that chart? Like how rare is it to see a chart like that, where in about a half-hour period of time, the value of a company, the market cap of a company drops by 50% and then recovers a very short time later? I mean, I feel like this doesn't even do it justice. This is a wild, wild swing. Swings like this you would see over years, not minutes.
It's rare. You don't often see charts like that, especially when we're talking about a company of this size. You might see it in some of the penny stocks that are worth less than $1, but in a company that's trading in from 150 to 300 in terms of its price per share, you don't often see that. And what was even more striking was perhaps that if you look at overall volume in terms of what shares were being traded, GameStop was right up there. It was one of the most traded companies yesterday, whereas the rest of the set was mostly S&P 500 companies, the big behemoths. So to see this happen in a stock like GameStop, it's extremely rare, and it really just gets the blood pumping.
Okay, so let's go back a few weeks here, which in the context of GameStop feels like ancient history. Go back to January. The narrative that emerged in the beginning of this year was it was the Reddit crowd, it was the day traders, it was the Robinhood folks who were taking on the hedge funds. They were doing a short squeeze. They were trying to destroy the hedge funds that were shorting GameStop. That was the narrative back then. What is the narrative right now? What is happening when it comes to what the folks in Wall Street Bets are talking about and what the analysts are saying about the fundamentals of the company?
Well, at this point, the shorts have been squeezed, and really everyone that I spoke to expected this to really peter out after you saw the short interest on GameStop and other shares really just evaporate. But at this point, the narrative now is that these retail traders, they aren't going away. You see them in GameStop, you see them in other companies as well. There's a lot of biotech sort of stocks that are on the penny stock range. They've also been seeing a lot of volume this week. And what's interesting, we're at a really crucial point because the stimulus bill, that $1.9 trillion package from Joe Biden, it's set to be signed on Friday. So you could see checks start to be sent out in the later few weeks of March. So it's going to be interesting to see what impact that has, because inevitably it's probably a safe bet that some of that money is going to end up in the stock market.
The stimmies, you say? Stimmies for tendies, as they say?
Stimmies for tendies. It's a great arb.
So what is the conversation happening in Wall Street Bets right now about these stimulus checks? Are there other companies that are being targeted right now, or has the conversation really shifted?
Well, it's really been on GameStop, which is remarkable. There's a site called StockTwits, which is another sort of internet message board stock trading forum. And if you look at what the most talked about companies are, it's GameStop and it's AMC, the two sort of stalwarts of this whole movement. But you are seeing some interest in Roblox, for example. That's a child's gaming platform. It started trading publicly yesterday, so that's attracting a lot of interest right now. But still, it seems like GameStop is really the stock of this movement.
So take a step back, give us a 30,000-foot view of what has been happening in the markets this week, and how that's different from what we're seeing with GameStop?
Well, GameStop, thankfully, it feels like a little bit of a sideshow. You have seen some really interesting dynamics start to emerge in tech stocks, for example. They've been under a lot of pressure the last few weeks, the last couple months, because there's this conversation about an economic reopening, what that means for inflation. Inflation typically means higher interest rates, which is going to hurt tech stocks. They're thought of as growth stocks, so their growth is expected to come later. And in a rising interest rate environment, investors tend to not see those stocks as so appealing. But this week, we got an update on inflation in the form of CPI figures yesterday. They were softer than expected. They didn't paint the picture of runaway inflation. So you are seeing tech rebound nicely, even though the NASDAQ 100 on Monday, it actually fell into a technical correction. It was down 10% from its highs, but it has rebounded in the last couple of days.
All right, never a dull moment, and thank you so much for giving us the latest. That's Bloomberg's Katie Greifeld. Thank you, as always, for your time. Well, coming up, a supermarket chain